All right, here we are. The Movie Men. David Fincher deep dive. We're going to be talking about Gone Girl tonight. This movie is dark. It's dreary. It's definitely not what I expected the first time I watched it, but boy, is it good, in my opinion. Now, when I first went and saw it in the theaters, this was, I'm probably 50-50 when it comes to seeing movies without seeing the trailer first. Sometimes I think the trailer is part of the movie watching experience. I'm trying to think of a good example, but okay, Star Wars Episode 1. Do you guys remember that when that trailer came out? And it was like you saw Lucasfilm, and then there was the fog, and you see like the guns like walking through the fog, and then you hear, if I remember right, it's like, and it's like every journey has a beginning. I don't even remember what movie we were watching, but we were in the theater. Alan was sitting next to me, and I remember he grips my thigh, and we were just like, this is happening, And sure, it spoiled some parts of the movies, the double lightsaber, that would have been cool to experience the first time, but the trailer just, So I'm not like totally anti-trailer. I think Chris Nolan does a phenomenal job at like giving non-spoiler trailers that like really make you want to see it. Anyway, that's all just to say, I went and saw Gone Girl for the first time without seeing the trailer first, and I saw Ben Affleck, I heard David Fincher, and I thought it was going to be like she was gone. I thought it was going to be like a Taken movie. I thought that she was gone and Ben Affleck was going to be the hero and rescue her. I thought there was going to be guns. I thought there was going to be action. Boy, was I completely off base when I watched the movie and saw drama thriller. I definitely wasn't in the headspace. So when the movie ended, I was like, I'm not sure if I like that. Rewatched it the second time, rewatched it the third time. I'm watching it with groups. We're having discussions afterwards. We're like, this was back in my college days when like we were all single and like trying to date around. And so many of me and my buddies were like, well, I'm never getting married. Like this was a great anti-marriage movie. Like if you want to dissuade somebody from entering into the bonds of matrimony, get them to watch Gone Girl, because she was loco, cuckoo, crazy, and there was nothing that Ben Affleck or any of her previous boyfriends could do about it. She was a psychopath, and she was perfect at hiding it. So now, as I watched it in preparation for this conversation, it is a juicy movie. It is so good. I enjoyed every second of it. It is so dramatic. It's on the edge of your seat. We don't have to get into details right now, but just my first impression to my last impression, that's kind of where I'm at with Gone Girl. Alan, what's your relationship with this movie?
All right. So my relationship with this movie is I thought I'd seen this movie, and I completely saw a 100% different movie. So in 2009, and for some reason it was Bruce Willis. So I don't know why I got Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck mixed up. But in 2009, there was a movie with Rosamund Pike and Bruce Willis called Surrogate, which is about, it's kind of a dystopic take on, the evolution of technology and the implications that it'll have on humanity. It was a really interesting movie. And I thought that was this movie. And so when we're getting ready for this, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen this before. And so that's what I was expecting when I sat down to watch this, which in that movie, Bruce Willis, if you haven't seen it, like, yeah, it is, he's a cop and he's like investigating. And so there's gun shooting and there's action, there's adventure, there's that kind of stuff happening in it. Like you said, that was not this movie. And so yeah, I went into this cold turkey. I didn't do it. Like I didn't, look for a trailer or anything. Cause like for real, I thought I'd already seen this movie. So I was expecting something else. And then I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And it was a lot of fun. So this was a first viewing for me. And kind of, as you said, what my overall takeaway for this movie is, this was probably the most misogynistic movie that I think I've ever seen, and probably in the best way. Like, it is the epitome of what the worst girlfriend could possibly be, and it's like, yeah. It took all of the worst qualities that stereotypically people make fun of in women and just hyperbole all the way to like 100. I think the only thing that might have been missing is she didn't get into a horrible car accident, right? That didn't happen in this movie. So
Dude, that's so funny you say that. That's yeah, because it's when was the Me Too movement? That was like 2016, 2014? Did this movie come out before or after or during? Because I kind of remember that this stirred up some controversy in that, the whole believe all women thing was going on, and this movie comes out and just derails that whole like paradigm where it's like, no, some women out there can be absolutely loco, crazy, cuckoo nuts. In the words of Bill Burr, 90%, 80%? Is there like believe all women? Do we have to believe it? You know what I mean? Like, isn't there a percentage? Justin, was this your first time watching the movie?
Yes. And I just looked up the social media first used Me Too in 2006 on MySpace. But hashtag Me Too was 2017. So one was before and really got big after in like 2017. Okay. So it's really interesting to be thoroughly engaged in a movie completely, because in some of David Fincher's movies, the opening scene will give you a good vibe or a bad vibe, and it kind of rolls throughout. This one was the most roller coaster ride, but every single switch was engaging, and it felt like you had like 5 different movies going on, because you would learn something and they would change your perspective, learn something, change your perspective. I never bought that Ben Affleck was a bad guy, even though they were forcing, but I could see for the most part, why people would be shocked at the twist. I was not shocked at the twist for some reason, but maybe it's because of social media or like things said about it that I already had, like, hey, there's look for a twist. And I'm just thinking, okay, she's faking. I did not understand all the details, but I was in Ben Affleck's corner the entire time. So I didn't have the full weight of it. That being said, I still really liked the ride, even though I wasn't shocked. And I think that's a testament to how good this movie is. And a lot of the lines are really poignant. If you could get your wife to actually see this movie, it would be interesting. But there's a lot of good details and things that I would want to ask, like a top 10 questions, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like, because she writes personality quizzes, right? That's her thing. So that's my overall impression. It was really good, and really, I wanted to not pick my wife's brain like he morbidly says in the beginning, but just like, hey, what do you feel about this? Like, do you really like this, or are you just saying that because I like this? Those kind of things.
That was well put, Justin. It is a ride, and it is very engaging. Yeah, what you said was perfect. I remember the first time I saw it, I don't know, maybe I was a little bit more naive than you, but I was just letting the movie pull me wherever it wanted to, and it was really fun because at the beginning, you're just confused, and then as you're going through her journal entries, you're like, oh, Ben Affleck's a bad dude. Like he's beating her. He's like, he's physical. She's worried. Like, you're just believing her. You're believing all women. Like for the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie, and then the twist happened, and then you're just like, and then another twist, and then you see her maniacal planning, like all this. Like it was just, I don't know. I thought it was beautiful. Case, is this your first time seeing it, or is this a rewatch?
It was my first time seeing it, and I watched it with Stacy, so it was interesting to have my wife sitting next to me and just keep looking over at her, and I'm like, you still listening to those true crime podcasts? You still watching these shows on like how to murder people and get away with it? I'm like, I don't like that she's spent so much time delving into like serial killers so she can write convincing bad guys and the stories she's writing, and I'm just like, I love you, honey. Dude, this movie was wild. And yeah, I had no idea what this movie was about. And honestly, for the first little bit, I thought it was like a Taken scenario where, right, she was kidnapped, and because that's what a lot of the clues pointed to. And then right, and you're just going through the journey from like Ben Affleck's perspective, where he's just a husband who came home and his wife's missing, and you're like, that, like, what would you do? And you know, if you think about it, like, they didn't have kids, and so, you know, it might be a little different. But like, if I came home, like, if I, you know, dropped my kids off at school and I came home and Stacy was gone, man, like, that would be a wild, like, experience. And then just that whole journey with the cops, and then them figuring things out, and just a downward spiral of psychoticness. So yeah, anyways, you know, I think, you know, to your point, this makes people go, believe all women. But at the same time, it might reinforce all those girls who are like, you know, I got to brush up on my true crime podcast. So if my husband cheats on me, I can set him up to be the worst person in the world and want to commit suicide because his entire life is just falling to shambles. So anyways, again, I think it showcased the worst of everybody.
Chase, I think it's time that you up your wife's monthly allowance, just to, you know, stay on her good side. Stay on her good side. No, so what I want to do in this discussion is I really want to focus in on two characters, obviously the two main, Ben Affleck and Rosa. I can never remember her name. Pike. What's her name, Al? Rosamund Pike.
It's Rosamund. And I might be saying it wrong, but there's an A between the Rosamund.
Rosamund Pike. That's right, Rosamund Pike. So I want to focus on their two characters, Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike. So let's start with Ben Affleck, and just in terms of like dissection of the character. This is probably my fourth or fifth time watching this movie. I was watching it with my wife as well, and this time, for some reason, and I think it's because since the last time I watched the movie, I've become a lot more politically aware, I guess, and I've become a lot more, you know, staunch in my politics, and, you know, without getting into all of the details there, I had a fresh vision of when Ben Affleck is dealing with the cops, and I was literally laughing out loud because of how he was just walking into every trap, just every single trap that the cops were set. And cops don't, you know, they don't tell you that they're setting traps, but they ask all the right questions to get you to indict yourself. And his character, like, Ben Affleck was so good at playing this character where he's just like so clueless and he's just like kind of bumbling around and just falling for all of these, I call them traps of the cops, but really they're just asking questions. And then they find out later that, you know, whatever was on the, fireplace mantle was moved a little bit. And there's like blood spatter in the kitchen, like one spot that he missed. And you look at the bleach and like, so then it just looks like he fell right into this trap that the cops were like, you killed your wife, didn't you? But he, meanwhile, is just trying to be helpful. He's just like a normal dude. And like you said, Chase, he came home and his wife is gone. And he's just like, yeah, of course, like, I'm going to cooperate with the police. It wasn't until that it dawned on him, and this is well into the movie, well into the like late first act of the movie, that it dawns on him what this is starting to look like. And then he's like, I'm not talking to you until I have a lawyer. And leading up to that, though, I was literally laughing out loud. It was like a comedy to me, because I'm just like, this is so true of so many normal American dudes, especially. It's just like being cooperative, answering the questions. But if you have a crazy cuckoo wife who set you up to frame you for her murder and you weren't aware of that, that's what everybody would do, and everybody would fall for it. And so I was just watching this happen again with this movie, and like with this new perspective that I have about like how you should interact with the police and how you should not indict yourself and how you need to practice the Fifth Amendment and all these things that like I've trained myself in these types of situations to be like very cautious. Like, don't trust the police necessarily too much. And just to watch Ben Affleck's character just bumble into every single trap they set was just, I was like, Natalie was weirded out because of how funny I found it. Justin, your thoughts on Ben Affleck's character?
Yeah, he was really good at playing a regular guy, and knowing that he was playing Batman, like in between this. Yeah, so like in the trivia it says that some scenes he's like really bulked up because he was playing Batman. But I thought maybe this is I believe all men, okay? So I believed him the entire time. I can't believe you doubted him. But what I found very interesting on this movie is that whenever he was being nice, he got railroaded. And the first half of this movie, he's just trying to be nice and a good guy, do the right thing. It gets railroaded. The only time he gets out of it is being manipulative, reserved, and untrue. And I hate that about Hollywood and the media, that in order to make it in society, you have to put on a fake front. And that's why we if you're on YouTube and you put something, you can't say the R word, you can't say the coof shot. You have to say all these weird idioms that everybody knows what you're talking about, but you can't say the trigger words. And that's what it is. Like the media and the social pressures forced him to become somebody he didn't want to be. And even till the end, where he's just like, I have to do this. Ah, crap. I have to play the game forever.
Well, one of my, just in line with that, Justin, one of my favorite themes was also his in-laws, how they were just kind of passive aggressive at first, but the moment he like falls in, like that it's revealed that he's that girl came out or whatever, and then they completely just dunk on him and abandon him and trash him. Like the way that he had to maneuver that, again, it just cracked me up that I'm like, that he's like looking at him like this, and then he smiles at the wrong time when the picture's being taken. Like he just kept falling into these stupid, dumb traps by trying to be cooperative and trying to be helpful, and it just set him up to. And then to your point, Justin, that's a really good observation too. That when I love his character, because when he needed to switch it on, he was able to switch it on. Once he met with Tyler Perry and like the attorney, and they started collaborating, and even he had to even put Tyler Perry in his place a couple of times. Like, I've got this. Like, I know what I'm gonna say. Like, all of a sudden, this air of confidence that he was able to put on, like, and then like you said, he was manipulating. He did the like chin thing because he's like, I know that she's watching, and even at the end of the movie, he's like, I wasn't serious. I just said what you wanted to hear. So he was so convincing that he even convinced her that he was sincere. Like, I love this character so much. Chase, what are your thoughts on Ben Affleck?
Well, so on that, I feel like he was 100% manipulated by Amy, right? Because not only was it that, it was she kind of said, I decided to come back when you said the thing that I needed you to say. And so even with everything, it's like she had the mentality of, I'm going to let you go down this path of, you're going to be accused and convicted of my murder when I'm not dead, unless you do exactly what I'm telling you to do and you say the right thing. And then at that point, I will find a way out and come back to you. And she manipulated him the entire time. I wouldn't say he fell into the cops trap. He fell into her trap. She had set it up so perfectly that, and however long she planned and schemed it, that everything was problematic. She had the friend that he didn't know about who lived down the street. She, got the pregnancy P so that she had a medical record of being pregnant. She bought all that stuff, so he had a mountain of credit card debt that he wasn't really aware of, and it was hiding in his sister's shed. And that, right, like all of these things. She manipulated him, and he just fell straight into every trap, and until he did what she wanted him to do, and then she's like, now I can come back, and she figured out that way too, and it's just so yeah, I feel like he was in his desperation doing whatever he had to do to get out of it, and which meant doing exactly what she expected him to do, and then he did.
Yeah, dude, I love, to your point, how he's falling for all of her traps. I guess what I meant to say when the cops, in my mind, if I was being interrogated by the cop, or if I was like walking the cops through my house and they were asking me those same questions, there were so many things that I would be like, I wouldn't answer that. Like, even if I'm innocent, I wouldn't give that. And, the detective's partner who is like suspicious of him the whole time. I love like the little side eye that Ben Affleck would give him. Like, who is this guy? Like, it's just fun to watch it start to build. Like, you start to see his character connecting dots as you're going along with him. And obviously he's a flawed character. Like Justin said, you're kind of rooting for him, but also he's committing adultery. Like, he's not a good guy. He's one part that made me and my wife laugh is when the cops were asking Ben Affleck, like, well, what does your wife like to do? And he's like, stuff. And they're like, you don't know what her hobbies are? He's like, read. She reads a lot of like, he had no clue. And he just looks so guilty because these answers, he was like, I don't know. What does she do? And then they're like, do you know who this is? He's like, never seen her. She's your neighbor and your wife's best friend. He's like, what? Like, it's so fun. And like, you finish the movie and in retrospect, it all makes sense. But during it, you're just as confused as he is. And you're like, dude, help yourself, make something up, sound confident. Like, you're falling for these traps and you're looking so guilty right now. Like, her setup, Amy's setup for her husband was just like, it was masterful. It was the perfect scheme, in my opinion. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Alan, give us your thoughts on Ben Affleck's character.
So it's kind of like, as I was saying, like her character was like uber crazy, and his was the kind of the polar opposite, right? And I think that was intentional. I kind of want to push back a little bit on what Chase was saying, though, just because I don't think that he was doing what she ultimately wanted him to do. Because I think in the beginning, like, she was like 100% committed to like off herself and be done with it and just stick it to him like 100%. But what I thought was kind of ingenious about his character is that once he realized that it was a game, then he kind of turned it on and became like, yeah. So you're right in the sense that she said, like, when she comes back and she's like, you did what, you said the thing I wanted you to say. And he's like, yeah, I just knew that you wanted to say it. But the thing is that he in turn kind of reverted himself back to the husband that she fell in love with. And then she's like, oh, okay, I can work with that. And that's the crazy, right? That's the legit crazy where she's like, I can work with that. I'll come back now. And like, now that you're mine and you can never leave, you know what I want. So we're just going to play this game forever. And he's like, F, now I'm stuck. You know what I mean? But like, like the chin touch and the TV interview where he actually pulled it out, like he put on his A game when he finally figured out what was kind of going on. And he's like, no, she's just trying to get me. So I know how to get out of this now. But then she changed her game. She's like, I have to change it up now because he's playing along now. This is fun for me. Like, I think that's like ultimately what she's thinking. She's like, oh, good. Yippee. This is going to be fun. And he's like, F, I'm just trying to get out of this. Right. So I think that's kind of the genius of this movie is that it is a complete roller coaster. I think she had a plan from the beginning to off herself and blame him for it. And then as things started to develop, I was like, oh, she's changing her game. And then he changed his game and then just got worse and worse. Justin.
Yeah. So if you look at her papers on her car seat and as she's going, one of them, and I think she had a calendar too. I'm just calling this from memory. I believe she's like, kill myself or not, or like she has different game plans, and she was changing on the fly because, again, she was not looking to get robbed. And there was a few things in this movie, like her taking the ball peen hammer to her face, I was like, why is she doing that? She was just like, maybe I'll use this to blend in. Boom, and I'm not going to kill myself today. And then she was, because a lot of the stuff she was doing was erratic. Like when she didn't like the comment of her trailer trash neighbor, she spit in her Mountain Dew. Remember that? It was just so, she was being odd that second half when she was talking about not being a cool girl anymore, and like she could do whatever she wanted. So she started doing some just weird stuff. So that's where I definitely, she did not have a plan after that, and it looked like because she mentioned that she was going to jump in the river, and they would find her body, and he would be pinned for her murder.
So, yeah, one thing that Amy's character reminded me a lot of, and Justin, I don't know if you've seen this show, but she reminded me a lot of Wendy Bird from Ozark, with just her ability to manipulate, to connive, to scheme, to like get in or out of sticky situations. Anyways, while watching the movie, and she, maybe could be like a distant relative of, but there was a lot that I was like, that reminds me of Wendy Bird, and just her ability to plan, and her her calculating mind, and just how she was able to manipulate. I thought was pretty impressive. So just, piggyback off of Justin, but for me, it was a lot of, that's like a different type of Wendy Bird.
Well, maybe this is the misogynist in me, but I think that one of the reasons why this movie resonated with me, and I shouldn't say resonate in terms of like I believe it's true, just resonate in that it was very entertaining.
Resonate as in Natalie's got a different personality we should know about?
Not as far as I know, but that's the key, right? Like Ben Affleck's character didn't know that about Amy either. That's what I was about to say. Is the cool thing about Amy's character is, and I hope I don't get crucified for saying this, but smart girls in most movies are kind of annoying because they're like a Mary Sue, can do no wrong. They're like it doesn't make for good characters typically. And I know that this sounds bad because there are smart males that like it actually works, but smart females it doesn't. For some reason, there's just a difference there. But this movie is so brilliant because she's a smart girl, but uses that intelligence in a very female way, like in a dark way, obviously, but in a very female way where she's just manipulative. She's calculated. She's she's like the puppeteer with all the puppet strings. She's got all these different contingencies. She's a legitimate smart girl, but it's not a boring character because she's using that intelligence for such maniacal purposes that it's almost more believable. And that's what's fun about her character. Since we're talking about her character now, let's just transition to that. That was my favorite part about hers because she's so smart. And like you guys already mentioned, she already had like contingencies in place with her calendar. And what I love about this movie is that nothing goes according to plan. I shouldn't say nothing, but so many things didn't go according to plan. As much as I love movies like the Oceans movies, Oceans 11, 12, and 13, my biggest problem with those movies is that everything seems to go just perfectly right, a little too perfectly right, Like they always know that the enemy knows that they know, and so that I don't. This is just like, especially Ocean's 12. It did a terrible job of like, well, I knew that you were faking, and you knew that I was faking, but I knew that you knew that I was faking. It just like it got so messy that you're like, there's no possible way. What I like about this movie, it's kind of like Italian Job. Italian Job had like the energy of the Ocean's movies, but remember when Edward Norton, he's at dinner with the girl, and she says the same line that her dad says, and you're only like 3/4 of the way of the movie, and all of a sudden her cover's blown, and you're like, oh no, what are they gonna? I like that. I like when movies like things go wrong, and this Gone Girl was just that. She had these contingency plans. She got robbed by those trailer trash people. She like hit herself with a ball peen hand. Is she going to kill herself? Is she not? What's she doing calling her ex-boyfriend again? Is she actually going to get back in shape and beautiful for him? And when she did, was she actually doing that for him or for Ben Affleck? What's her long game here? And it just, as the story unravels, it's just nothing went according to plan, and yet still so many like juicy plot twists were right in front of us. Alan, what was your thoughts on Amy, the character Amy?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like her character was a genuine pleasure to watch. And I think a huge part of that is to the credit of Rosamund Pike. Like she's I've seen her in a couple other things, and she's kind of a really classy actress, right? Like she kind of takes like the really, you know, I don't want to say provocative, but what's the right word?
Dynamic.
Kind of like serious and dynamic. Yeah, she takes pretty dynamic roles, and usually very serious, and she pulls it off really well. And so her doing the same thing in this movie, I think, was like she just knocked it out of the park with her like portraying the dedicated commitment to the con was so cool. And her flexibility, I think, was really cool too. And just like you were saying, like as it kind of just goes off the rails, you know, like her kind of thinking on the fly, I think really allowed her to dig in her heels of how genuinely psychotic she really was, right? When she got Neil Patrick Harris's character to kind of totally fall in love with her again at the drop of a hat, basically. And then she freaking just like knifes him. like it was crazy. And I was like, holy cow. Like that's commitment to a role, I suppose. I was gonna say what I was gonna say was on the vein of David Fincher being the director. Like we've watched a lot of his movies at this point. And he does like to throw in a twist, you know what I mean? Like Fight Club's twist is like chef's kiss perfect. Girl with the dragon tattoo, I kind of had those kind of vibes going into this. Like when I kind of realized what was starting to happen in the movie, I was like, okay, is this just going to be another like girl with dragon tattoo kind of vibe and feel? And then I could kind of like anticipate the twists and turns. I mean, that was just me just trying to logic it out as having watched a lot of these David Fincher movies already. But this one just was really different. And I credit a lot of that to her portrayal of her character. Like just, I thought she did a pretty awesome job of legit being crazy and then taking it all the way, like full born 100%, didn't relent, no Mary Sue. Like you said, I think that's part of what makes her really cool. But then, man, she committed and went all the way. One of the things, the last thing I'll say right now is that I think we've talked about this before, but remember in what's the name of the movie? Law Abiding Citizen with Gerard Butler. And one of the disappointing things about that movie was that he starts off like so cool, so committed, so manipulative of the law, but then he just like kind of fumbles at the end. It's like they never really knocked, like his point was lost and it kind of didn't, it fizzled. Honestly, it kind of fizzled at the end. But this was not that. Like she started off the victim and you kind of believed it, and then you're along for the ride, and then she commits to being even more crazy and gets more crazy and more crazy, and then she kind of just wins at the end. Like the crazy girl got it. Like that's how the movie ends. She's got it. It was crazy.
And can I just mention, sorry, Justin, I'll get just one thing really quick. Can I just mention, like, we felt it when his sister wailed at the end. It's like 18 years and he's just trapped, you know? And you felt, at least I did, I felt that. I was like, ooh, like what a great way to end the movie. Just like leaving your guts twisting and turning in discomfort. Like I say this all the time. I've said it on previous episodes, but like I love movies that make me feel something, even if they make me feel squeamish. In this movie, like it ends and you're just like, I feel so bad for that character, like Ben Affleck's character. What were you going to say, Justin?
Yeah, these are the type of movies where at the end, you start writing the sequels in your head. And you're like, what would happen if this, like, would they start now having to kill to satiate her? And your mind just goes in whole different places, like how you could try to get out of it because the cops know, but there's nothing they can do about it. Certain the female cop. But as far as Rosamund Pike, the reason why David Fincher chose her is she was one of the few actresses that David Fincher can he knows all these actors. You meet them in a room, he could just pinpoint them, and he's like, I have the hardest time reading her. He's like, I needed a chameleon. She was it, and that's how I knew she was perfect for the role. And the other thing about David Fincher is he's an actor's director. He's like, my number one commodity are these actors, and that's why I'm doing 100 takes and let them stew and just live in these and breathe in these. And even Neil Patrick Harris and Tyler Perry, two comedians, were believable in this movie. How awesome is that? And then the lady TV actor that's way over the top, and she comes to the house, icebreaker, here's a robot dog. Like I bought every single performance, and it's probably because they did 100 takes, and he chose the very best one for each scene, and it was brilliant. I mean, I've never liked Tyler Perry, but dude, he was like a show stealer in this.
In my opinion, every single actor in this movie was perfect in their role. Like, I can't find a single, like the in-laws, the little, like the 19-year-old chick or whatever, like Tyler Perry, like you said, the cops, the two cops, the lady cop, like, everybody just did a phenomenal job. So I think you're absolutely right, Justin, that like one of David Fincher's superpowers is finding the perfect actor for the characters of his movies. And if I can just say something, I want to dovetail on something that Alan said about Rosamund Pike. I went into this movie having seen her in movies like Fracture. Have you guys seen that with Ryan Gosling? Excellent movie. Where she's like an attorney, but to Alan's point, she's like classy. She's like really well put together. Same thing with Jack Reacher, which came out, I think, in 2012. Same thing. She's an attorney. She's super classy, well put together. And so to see her in this movie, like I went into this movie, I'm like, oh, I've seen her before. I like this actress. And then, the sex scene happened with the throat slitting, and I was like, I had no idea she was capable of a role like that. Like it was so like that scene. Can we just take a moment to appreciate that? I know it's like icky and gross and strong, violent, sexual content. Like it's definitely not something I want my kids to watch. But if we can just separate our emotion from the art itself, that scene was so good. It was perfectly executed, and leading up to it when she's like manipulating the cameras by like screaming on the floor, and she's like, oh geez, that thing with the wine bottle. Oh. Anyway, leading up to that, and I read this on IMDb trivia, and Justin, maybe you read this as well, but apparently she and Neil Patrick Davis practiced that scene so many times to get it absolutely perfect. Like they auditioned, and I know most people would be like, oh yeah, practice the sex scene. Yeah, sure. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But Neil Patrick Davis is gay. Like that adds this huge other component about his level of acting, and that scene in particular, where it's so believable. Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say? Neil Patrick Harris? What did I say?
Davis.
Oh, I'm sorry. Neil Patrick Harris. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that correction, Al. But the fact that he's gay in real life and has to play like this desperate ex-boyfriend who's absolutely infatuated and in love with this girl.
Can I say stalker? Not just infatuated, but he was his own evil kind of thing.
Exactly.
His own issues.
Exactly. But like again, every actor just performed their character to perfection. You hated him, you were annoyed by him, and that sex scene, you would never know he's gay in real life. That was it was so cool. So I just wanted to like highlight that as like a moment of appreciation for all actors involved, and the scene itself. I just thought that was so like that is, in my opinion, the climax of the movie. That is the most memorable part of the movie, and it was just executed to perfection. It was gory, it was nasty, it was violent, all the gross things that made you feel the exact way that David Fincher wanted you to feel. Chase, what are your thoughts on the character of Amy?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that getting ready for this discussion, kind of were and I don't know how to articulate it very well, but she was like a child celebrity, right? Her parents wrote those Incredible Amy or The Amazing Amy, right? The Amazing Amy books, and so right, trying to like work through kind of some of the things that happen. You go, okay, so she grew up incredibly famous, incredibly popular, and her parents kind of led her down a path that they wanted her to go down, with the Amazing Amy, and she mentioned it a couple of times where they're like, oh, what about the time where Amazing Amy got a dog? And she's like, yeah, I didn't get a dog, but my parents wanted to portray that we got a dog, or whatever it was. And so I kind of felt bad for her character, because her entire life, right, she was just doing what her parents kind of wanted her to do. And then, she goes off and is trying to live her own life and meets Ben Affleck, and right, they kick it off, and it's great for a little bit. But then he kind of stops dating her and just is her roommate. And then I think that just, kind of killed it. But yeah, it, her character was just, I feel bad for people who are psychotic, probably both with mental imbalance, like chemical imbalance, but also their environment upbringing probably drove them to insanity. And recently, right, you have the whole Nickelodeon thing that blew up, talking about all of the child actors out of Nickelodeon who were abused and exploited and all that stuff, which is terrible. But this movie kind of reminded me, I'm like, oh yeah, like child actors, the Disney child actors who all kind of came up, and they're all incredibly messed up, and same with Nickelodeon and all this stuff. And I'm like, she's just a foreshadowing of what we didn't know, but Hollywood knew and was trying to tell us, or maybe David Fincher, right, is trying to tell us. And now we've just seen, oh, like Disney exploits all their children and sexualizes them and drives them insane. Oh, and Nickelodeon did it too. So anyways, but like I feel bad for her in that regard, but she is a psycho person who needs to be probably institutionalized.
This is a good part to point out that Amy had an imaginary twin, which was the Amazing Amy. And she was always looking up to and always second best to an imaginary twin. And Ben Affleck's character was a twin. And so you have the dichotomy of both of them trying to, one, he was giving his twin the things that he should have been giving to Amy. And Amy was trying to live up to impossible standards and parents that were just completely clueless. And it was more of a perfect storm of events, because as far as Gone Girl is concerned, the when she was gone from the relationship, it was like anything after the honeymoon phase. You have the settling in, and then you have the who you really are phase, and the recession and hard times, they just kind of drifted apart. But if any one of those things was addressed, I'm not certain she would end up a serial killer. And not even a serial killer. She's killed one person and framed for almost another one. Definitely some issues there, but it was his adultery and him putting fingers on her, like that's my line. You're stealing my man, and he's doing the same things. So I'm, it's like Megamind. I'm going to be the baddest villain of them all, because obviously, you took my best years. You're using my money. You're a lazy slouch, and you think you can get away with this? And you took me to Missouri in the middle of nowhere? No, you're not going to win. And so you can see, I mean, it's all believable that all these things happen. And it wasn't just her upbringing alone, but the circumstances, the perfect storm that led to this, and it's all believable and it's all earned.
You know what? I think is so cool, because what you and Chase just pointed out, like her deep-seated mental problems from her upbringing or whatever else it might have been. Again, talking about the character, because Rosamund Pike, like, she's a great actress, obviously, but the character Amy, I love that when you're first introduced to her and Ben Affleck have such good chemistry. And you know how he like sits down when she's being interviewed and she's like so bored with the interviewers, and then he says like, he like loosens everything and she laughs, and he's charming and she's charming, and they're just in sync, and they've got like this chemistry that's palpable, and you're just like, oh, they're like the perfect couple. And again, to you guys have already expressed this at the beginning of the movie, you're like, oh, Ben Affleck's messed up. Like, she's perfect. She's like beautiful. She's smart. She's like successful. She's got money. But then obviously the movie goes on. You find out she's crazy. But what's cool is that her character can act normal despite all that deep-seated trauma or whatever you want to call it, like the childhood, whatever. The fact that she can act, I actually said this to my wife the other day. I'm like, I wonder if people like Leonardo DiCaprio, like, if they've had a bad day, if they can like tap into their actor inside them and be like, I'm going to act like somebody who just won $1 million. And they are so convincing because they're so method and they internalize it. Can you just be anything when you're that good of an actor? Again, talking about the character Amy, I'm just like, that's cool that character had, like, she's conniving, but she's also convincing. But then you see her when she comes back covered in blood, and like, once the detective lady starts grilling her a little bit and starts like cornering her, she's like, oh, I'm just so tired. I'm just like, it was like perfect, Justin, what did you just say? We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be. Oh, there you go. Kurt Vonnegut. Thank you. Great quote. But anyway, so just seeing her wide range of personality traits, the character Amy, where she's like sweet, sexy, funny, smart, intelligent, and then she goes on this bender where she gains all this weight so people won't recognize her, puts on glasses, and she's like gross and smutty and spitting in Mountain Dew and petty and not likable, and she's just like this disgusting person. But then all of her money gets stolen, and all of a sudden she needs help, so she calls her stalker, and he looks at her and he keeps saying things like, you need to look like yourself to feel like yourself. Like, obviously he like wants her to like pretty up again, and then she does. And so now you get this beautiful, charming, smart victim, and then she sees Ben Affleck on the TV, and you can see her wheels turning, and you can see her crazy stalker like looking at her and being like, we need to turn this TV off, because he can see that those wheels are turning, and she's starting to fall for him again. Like, her range of just, she was all over and then like I said, she comes back covered in blood, can't take the questions from the police officers, pulls the victim card one more time. I can't believe you would ask me this in this state of distress. Like, she's just, I can't praise that character.
How did you get the box cutter? Oh, I'm just getting so tired.
Yeah, dude.
You were tied up. How did you get a box cutter? Oh, these drugs are making me drowsy. And then the FBI is like, no, it's our jurisdiction. Like, you simple cop, don't bother. Like, no.
Yeah, and what's fun too is if you're in Ben Affleck's corner, which I think the movie's kind of designed to put you there, and again, watching his range, his character, his range, because he's like trying to be helpful, quiet. He's perplexed at the beginning of the movie. He's kind of a doofus. But then once he tees up with Tyler Perry, once he like attorneys up with him and they start game planning, you're like, oh, he's got chops too. Like that character we saw at the beginning when him and Amy were vibing, and he's charming and he's quick-witted and he's got like these smart, sexy, funny things to say. Like, he can switch it on too when the cameras are rolling. He can switch it on. He takes, and by the way, their strategy, like his strategy, I should say, because Tyler Perry didn't want him to say, but him just owning it and just being like, I'm a terrible person and that's not on you. Like, that is how many times have we heard about celebrities being canceled and they just go quiet and they hope that it blows over, and then meanwhile their reputation is just getting absolutely nuked. I think the best example of somebody fighting back against that is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, because he was getting nuked for years based on her allegations, and then they go to court and you're like, oh my gosh, she's a psychopath. And Johnny Depp was absolutely like, I'm glad that was televised, because now you see oh, he wasn't mean or abusive or anything. She's just cuckoo nuts. And so to see that like in illustrated in movie format with Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, I just thought that again, I could talk about this movie all night. I think I thought it was perfect. It's a perfect movie in my opinion. Alan, you've been sitting there in silence. And all the things that you've heard me, Chase, and Justin say in the last 10 minutes, any thoughts come to your mind? Anything you want to contribute?
That's a bold statement to call this a perfect movie. We might have to put that one through the ringer, but I might agree. Like it was just a wild ride. I think you're right. I think that there's some pretty deep-seated observation and analysis that can go into it. Justin brought up a couple really interesting things that the twin piece I thought was really interesting. I didn't even think about that. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Justin. I thought, yes, the climax of the movie, like you said, I think was obviously the box cutter in the neck. But you said it kind of just a little while ago or earlier on, but I think the part that I felt the most was when he kind of admits defeat and he's talking to his sister and he's like, I really need you to be with me on this. And she's like, I've been with you since before we were born. And she's just like bawling. And because she knows she's in it too. And I was like, oh dang. That's rough. And leaves you feeling icky. But so sorry, when you said that it was like a perfect movie, I would, generally speaking, I would say I'd have a hard time calling a perfect movie one that makes you end up feeling so like hopeless at the end. But this one I think is an exception to that. So I agree with you, Bo.
Yeah, and great call. I wanted to say the same thing, Justin. I've watched this movie probably 4 or 5 times, and I never considered that twin thing. That was such a cool observation / insight. So thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to look at it through a new lens next time I watch this movie. All right, let's start wrapping here. Final comments. Justin, I know you got some notes, so we're going to give you sufficient time. But Chase, kick us off with some final thoughts about the movie, and maybe even sprinkle in some analysis of David Fincher while you're at it, since this is a David Fincher deep dive.
Yeah. Let's see. So the David Fincher things that I come to mind are the twist. I think, man, I feel like having watched what we're approaching about a dozen of these movies. I don't know, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. I think it's I think one of the themes that I've noticed is the characters aren't what they seem. That you have the character, you're introduced to them, you think you understand a little bit, but it's never the way it is. And so I think that's that seems to be a theme that's been kind of continuing through a lot of these movies is just because a character seems likable at the beginning or a character seems dislikable doesn't necessarily mean that that's who they are. And if you stick with it, you learn a lot. And it's been great. I think my final thought is there's a character that's not a character in the movie I think 20 years ago nobody really thought was as powerful as it is, and it's the court of public opinion. And you're right. So in the 90s, you had newspapers, you had your morning TV shows, and maybe late night TV shows, which kind of influenced a lot of opinion. But you didn't have social media, you didn't have kind of what you have now, and I feel like this movie highlighted how powerful the court of public opinion is in average people's lives. Now, Amy was kind of a pseudo celebrity, like not hugely big, but decently big. She had a trust fund of $1 million or what have you, which isn't it's not insignificant, but it's not like Hollywood A-list actor money. And so but like as Ben Affleck's going through, I mean, you just saw how he would do something and it would be taken and twisted and shifted and looked through lenses, right? When the girl's like, "Hey, can you take a picture with me and smile?" And they take the selfie and he smiles, and then everybody's like, "Why is he smiling with this girl? His wife's gone. Why is he taking pictures with these girls?" And just on and on and on. And then there were the people, like, you know, you would consider them like fringe people who are like, does he have some weird sexual relation with his twin sister and all this stuff? And like his sister's like, why are they saying this? Like, this isn't at all. And he's like, how do you get out of these situations? And I mean, you know, since that movie, I think all of us have seen where these courts of public opinion just spiral so fast. And Bo, you mentioned it, where it's like, if you don't get in front of it, it can completely nuke your entire existence, because it spirals so fast, so heavy. And if you get everybody, then you're blacklisted and you can't work anymore, and nobody wants to touch you because you're toxic or radioactive or whatever. And it's just, it spirals so fast. And if you don't have a way to get out, I mean, Johnny Depp has millions of dollars to sue himself back into, you know, a proper light or what have you. But, you know, Ben Affleck's character, like, it was tough. It was really, really tough for him to stop that, you know, downward spiral and try and shift the lens to not be so bad. So anyways, I loved the movie. It just made me realize I need to try and convince my wife to read not murder books, and maybe something a little more cheery, and I might see myself get to a healthy old age if an accident or something doesn't get me first.
Chase, I think I'd ask you, or in normal circumstances, I might ask you, like, how would Batman handle the Gone Girl situation? But I think we got our answer. I think we had a Batman kind of deal with it.
And I think that's probably about how he would do it. It might be a little easier with all the money, but we saw how Batman did it.
Can I just mention, since we're talking about Ben Affleck and his different, like, that's so funny and ironic that this has been a main question for Chase and our other episodes, but now we have Ben Affleck. So the irony there is funny. But did you guys happen to see the Netflix roast of Tom Brady? And Ben Affleck like pops in. Ben Affleck is a terrible actor when he's not acting. Like, he pretty much bombed at the roast. And then you guys have probably seen like the famous clip. I think it was on Bill Maher's show, maybe, where he tries to, like, he's arguing with Sam Harris. You guys happen to remember? It happened like 10 years ago. Anyway, Ben Affleck, when he doesn't have a script, he's quite unimpressive. And that just accentuates, in my mind, his skill set as an actor so much, because as Bruce Wayne and Batman, he's so confident. He's jacked. He's, in my opinion, he was a great Batman. In freaking, you know, Armageddon, he's charming, he's funny, he's hilarious. Same thing with Pearl Harbor. And then in this movie, like, to Chase's point, he's like a normal dude until he starts getting scrutinized by the court of public opinion, and then he has to switch it on. And I don't know, like, put a script in that man's hand and he just becomes magic. I love watching Ben Affleck in movies, and I'm always shocked when I see him not in movies how unimpressive he is. I'm like, that is like a true actor's actor, in my opinion. Like, it's kind of weird to be impressed by somebody's unimpressiveness, but in this context, I think it sort of makes sense. Alan, you're the other East Coaster here. Give us your final opinions.
So a couple things that I noticed from that were lacking from a David Fincher perspective. Did it rain very much in this movie? I don't remember it raining very much.
Just blood.
Just blood.
It was wet. I feel like the entire time, and it's Missouri, right? It was just wet all the time.
Sure, but it wasn't
and sugar.
dreary, right? Like,
and sugar.
Yeah, yeah. But it wasn't like 7 just constantly raining. It wasn't like dripping from Alien 3. Like, it wasn't as moist
Yeah.
as David Fincher's other movies. And the other thing that I also noticed, sorry,
It wasn't as drippy, I think might be a good way. Because even Fight Club, it wasn't necessarily raining, but it was drippy, you know? Like his movies are typically drippy.
And grimy. Yeah.
Yeah, if that's a word. Yeah, drippy and
This
grimy.
one was pristine,
That's
except
what I was-
for except for like the internal turmoil was definitely icky. Like every character was icky, but the settings were always pristine.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say, is that it wasn't grimy, because he tends to get into the grimy, seedy side of, of humanity. And this time it was all internal, and it was quite the flip flop. And I applaud him in his directing choice, because as Justin just pointed out, the griminess was internal to the characters of the film, which, yes, that was present in his other movies, but he oftentimes makes the scenery adapt to the characters, so that you experience the characters the way that he wants you to. But this time was very different, because he was setting us up as viewers, as movie men, to go along with this roller coaster of a ride, and I think it worked really well. So I think that'll be my final thought, and I'll cede my time back over to Justin. But this was a good one. I really enjoyed this experience.
I appreciate that, Al. It was really cool. I guess I'm the only one that this was a rewatch. All three of you guys saw it for the first time. So this has been really enlightening. I appreciate your insights. Justin, bring us home.
All right, you ready? Let me get some liquid death. Some liquid Amy. I will end with a philosophical, so I'm going to save that for later. Number one, no one knows their wife's blood type. No one. So I can. Do you know, Chase? Okay.
O positive, or O negative, sorry.
Aha! See?
A positive.
I don't.
I'm with you, Justin. I have no clue. Yeah.
Okay. The extra phone in the glove box was really weird. It looked like an old phone, and then you realize that's his burner phone for his girlfriend. Amy writes in sinister children's book. Like her parents are children's book, but every time you hear Amy's voice and she asks a question, it's like a twisted, morbid children's book answer or question. The detective uses the word hanky, which is an homage. I don't know if it's what I know for sure is that this was used in 1993's The Fugitive, when one of the detectives says, "Oh, it feels hanky." It's like, and then Tommy Lee Jones goes, "Hanky? What are you talking?" Yeah, hanky. It's like, where are you using that word? So as an homage to Fugitive, at least, if not like real cultural thing. So I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but hanky was used. That's why Fugitive is a perfect movie. Amy's show love was more important than not completely emotional. She wanted the outward appearance of love from her partner. She said, love is not an if statement. You have to be the very best at all times. And I was thinking about this is I'm going to wrap up with these two philosophical questions that this movie brings. The first one is it unconditional love, or are we supposed to be the best version of ourselves? And if we aren't we supposed to pretend to be until we are? It's a lot more deeper than I think we realize, because that's what she was craving. And that's kind of what we're taught as Christians, is to be more like somebody else than ourselves. And the other one is marriage is not about happiness, but about joy. And she kept saying, if we're not happy, we're not, her philosophy was it just, they both needed to be happy all the times. And if they weren't happy, or one person wasn't happy, then they both weren't happy. And it was more of a spiral. And so I submit to you those philosophical questions, and here's the last one. Ben Affleck wanted a different relationship because he wanted to feel seen, as he called it, and not just a character.
That's a great way to end this one. I'll just put a final capstone in terms of when I say it's a perfect movie, you got to remember, and by the way, we're still working on the parameters. Alan, you did a really good job of making a pretty good list. The problem I have with your list, I think, is one of them is, what was it? I don't think I have a problem with the rewatchability, because that, I think, is an element of the perfect movie. But there was something about like enjoying it or bringing you happiness or something like that. My problem, or I would say this is a perfect movie because as a drama thriller, it made you feel the exact way that the director wanted you to feel. And so, yes, you feel icky. So it might not be rewatchable in that regard. Whatever we were talking about, Al, it was a couple months ago when I was like, yeah, but Saving Private Ryan, like you said, Saving Private Ryan wasn't a perfect movie because you don't want to watch it continuously because it's deep and it's hurtful. And so that's the problem I have with that one criteria, because I think that if the movie's meant to hurt you or meant to make you feel uncomfortable or meant to make you squeamish, then that should be chalked up as a point in favor of its perfection. And I think that Gone Girl did that like perfectly, for lack of a better term. So let's continue discussing it. I'd like to get, Drew's opinion and Callum's opinion and Brownie's opinion in terms of like the perfection of this movie. We can discuss that another time. But let's wrap with, everybody's going to give it a ranking of 1 to 10. I'm going to get, I said it's a perfect movie, so I have to give it a 10, I think. I can't find a flaw with it. The acting, the story, the plot, the ups and downs, the execution, the directing, I don't know. Chef's kiss. Perfect. Alan, what do you rate it?
Sorry, I quickly jumped over to, this is the 12th David Fincher movie that we've seen, right? So I would, so instead of ranking it 1 to 10, I would probably rank it 1 to 12 since we are looking at the David Fincher movies. I think I'd put this one number 2. I think I put Fight Club number 1, and I put this one number 2. I think that's my order for David Fincher films right now.
Justin?
If we're gonna do rank that way, this might be number 3 or 2, depending. And again, maybe it's depending on your relationship with your wife. Things aren't going good. This is number 1 movie. I don't know. I would give it a 9 out of 10. I would think. I'm not watching it once. I don't know how much you could really fully embrace a full number system, but it was definitely a page turner in movie form, and definitely rewatchable.
Chase?
I agree with Alan and Justin. I would say in a out of 10, 9.5 of the David Fincher movies we've seen thus far. I too would probably put it at number 2. So I'm excited to see where Mank and The Killer end up. Yeah, for the ones we've seen so far, I would rank it as the second best, second to Fight Club, and then like a solid 9.5 out of 10. Like, spectacular movie.
Cool. Well, with that, let's go ahead and wrap there, and I will see you guys next time for what would you say it was, Chase? What's the next movie in
Mank?
Mank
With who is it?
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. Thank you.
That'll be a first time for all of us, so this will be fun. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good night. Thanks for joining. Peace.